What's up, Wildcatter Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Oil and Gas Startups Podcast. This is the first ever. We've been doing this show for almost 3 years. We were just talking about it on good old social media last night. Started in a closet down the hallway, and here we are. Now we got 3 dudes on the show at one time. This is crazy.
We got them on the casting couch.
One casting couch. We've got, I'm going to try to remember everybody's name, Mark, Matt, and Chandler from Hulk.
Ding, ding, ding.
Dang, that's good. I've seen Chuck and Jake. I messed up the name. I've seen you mess up names when it's just one guess.
You know what? I'm like a walking CRM, man. I don't forget. So we actually grabbed lunch last night, or dinner last night, and so I've actually once again broken my rule. I know a little bit more about this than
y'all go.
And I'm like, well, it's one of the best local places. I don't want to give it away. I don't want it to blow up. But Redfish up in Tomball.
Was it good?
Oh, yeah, it was legit. Solid. Yeah, big portions.
That's good.
Yeah.
The best
6
places
rolls.
are in the shitty locations. It's like a half boat, half house.
Oh yeah,
It's one of those places.
yeah.
Great atmosphere.
Yeah.
Trust seafood place if it's half a boat. Like it's gonna be.
You know
good.
it's gonna be good. You know it's gonna be good. So so we had a good time last night. Hopefully you guys are not too hungover.
This will be interesting. It's like going left to right.
I know.
Yeah,
This is a full interrogation.
This is not an optimal setup for a podcast, but we'll make it work.
We're breaking it, man.
So tell us, one, we were kind of talking before we got on the podcast because you guys actually dropped off some samples of your tool last week, and I was playing around with it, and you guys had a great little video on it. It's showing us the ESP clamps, and as I was telling you, I've drilled and completed wells.
Yeah.
I ran a lot of tools, but when it comes to production type things, I'm not really familiar with them. So I'm excited to learn about ESPs and the tool that you guys have. So I don't know who wants to take the lead on kind of giving us the quick rundown on what Hulk is.
Yeah, quick rundown on the product. So Hulk is a oil field service company specializing in cable protection. So the 2 products that are in front of us right now, I'd reach for them, but I got this mic in front of me. Hulk motor lead, which ultimately goes around the ESP flanges themselves. And so ESP electric submersible pump.
No, yeah.
So that one right there. Perfect. So ESP's form of ESP electric submersible pump, form of artificial lift. That goes around the flanges to protect the motor lead and also the capillary tubes. You can run tech lines in that. It's overall protection and securement. And then the second product line that we have, Hulk cross collar cable protection that Colin's grabbing. That's a 7-inch motor lead that you have right there, Colin. That
Okay.
product right here.
I grabbed that one. Here we go.
It's the mic.
That's the OG
Boom.
right there.
So that's the OG. So that's our
I feel like
cross
product
collar.
models here. I'm like,
Right. So that goes on the production tubing. So it'll fit 4.5-inch production tubing, 3.5-inch different size cast, but that's specifically for 2 7/8, and that's what we see out in the field for the majority of the production we see.
yeah.
So today,
I feel like we're on the Home Shopping Network.
I know, that's what I said. I feel like
wanna
I'm
have
like a
this like
product model,
spinning
like,
around. For like
guys, I put
I
these
just got
props
an
here
idea for a new show. Like, people come pitch
pretty.
their tools, and like I'll sit here and model it for them.
Put the props here for a reason.
Hand model.
So today with Hulk motor lead and cross collar, we've got 500,000 of these deployed over this is just 3.5 years too. We've got
500,000.
500,000 units, 1,600 wells that have been installed in, and then over 30 plus operators in the space right now that are currently running us.
Jeez.
With the Permian being our biggest area of expansion.
Yeah.
You did the introductions, but Matt, my background ultimately is a large OFS company, worked there for a good deal of time. Mark's background worked at him with that OFS company.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chandler, a good friend from back home, he's got finance and then manufacturing background.
Nice.
Yeah. So why we got into Hulk, ultimately, when we were at the OFS space, there was such a void in the marketplace with what the current product line was. And we just decided like this can be done better. And ultimately got to where we are today, filled the void, and here we are with Hulk.
Okay, so can you elaborate on that void a little bit? Because I'm interested in, how it was done before, what was the opportunity that you saw? I'm assuming, maybe like NOV or some of these types had a product that were similar, but, maybe it was just not a great product. What was that void that y'all saw?
Yeah, I would say, so when you look at that space, our industry is pretty aged, right? And so there's foundational companies out there that have been doing this for a long time. And most of those companies got bought and sold again and again and again. And they ended up losing focus. And so you got all these products out there that work-ish, but they didn't have a lot of ESP experience. They didn't understand the challenges. And they really weren't built for unconventionals. And so we were primarily working in unconventionals. And that's where we went.
What's the difference in ESPs and the configuration between a conventional and unconventional?
Yeah. So, I mean, the primary thing obviously is just, historically it's pretty vertical wells, right?
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. A lot of opportunity for larger casing, big pumps, but pretty short equipment. So today, we're going down 10,000 feet, but none of it's straight down, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got all kinds of inclination, deviation, you get these multi-well pads, and then you got to step out inevitably to hit more zones. So with those big step outs, you've got this cable that's running down there, and it's just dragging that cable all the way down for 10,000 feet.
Yeah. So let's kind of, some people that may be listening to this may not have downhole knowledge. So when you have when you drill a well, you never have a straight well, even if it is vertical, right? Like you're gonna have dog legs, different inclination, like it always happens. And so you have drag, especially once you go out into the horizontal, you're gonna have drag. And so with an ESP, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert on ESPs, but you guys are gonna have this cable that runs all the way up the tubing. And so you got to make sure that cable's not getting caught up in that drag, or else it's going to tear up, right?
Exactly. So conventional ways that were done previous to 2012, it was banding. And that's what the Bakken was, our backyard where we worked. And so they would band equipment. And then
like the silver metal bandits, like cranking them. Right. Okay.
Yep. So they would use bands. And then ultimately in 2012, 2013, they started then doing larger pads. And then spacing was a little tighter. You got that inclination, deviation, step outs that happened around like 2,000 feet. And then you started seeing failure. And you're like, where's the denominator? Like, what's happening? What's chewing up the cable? And ultimately looking at wellbore diagrams, you're saying, okay, we need to ultimately secure, protect. And there were products on the marketplace that at the time were predominantly used in the offshore market.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately it becomes then this is a need. We need to ultimately run this product on U.S. land to protect these wellbores. And so in the Bakken, 98% of the wells that are ESPs right now, or that are deployed on ESP from artificial lift, have cable protection. And then you're starting to see that in the Permian as well. It's a slower, the Permian from the development standpoint really started taking place in like 14, 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bakken was like 08, 09, 10.
Yeah.
And so that Permian, we're starting to see that same type trajectory of wellbores that we're seeing in the Bakken now in the Permian, which is this overall cable protection adoption necessity.
So do you run just one of these? You run 20 of them?
Great question. So on the ESP flanges themselves, it's typically seven to eight.
Okay.
So, Mark, do you want to run through like an ESP like total connection?
Yeah, sure.
Run us through like the configuration.
Talk about the configuration.
ESP 101. Here we go.
ESP 101. Okay, so you guys know what a sump pump is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine one of those things, but we got to stick it 10,000 feet down the ground. So at the very bottom, you're gonna have a sensor bolted to a motor. Motor's bolted to a seal or a protector. That's how they like equalize pressure. They protect the motor that way. And then you've got an intake with gas separators and pumps and all these different connections. Well, that string is like 150 feet long. Could be shorter, could be a lot longer, but you can't take that on a truck, right? So what they do is they're bolted in like 25-ish foot sections, 25 foot sections. And at those flanges, that's where the clamp goes.
Okay.
Now that equipment, a lot of that equipment's 4 inches. And then you look at the casing ID, it's like, 4.5 to 5 inches, somewhere in there. Not a lot of room. And you got this small cable hanging out the outside of this equipment that weighs like 2,000, 3,000 pounds, just grinding against it, right? And again, it has to get through the wellhead and you got to go 10,000 feet with this thing. So now that cable, it's got somewhere between 2,000 and 3,500 volts. So a lot of voltage. So any kind of nick, ding, impact, anything like that, man, especially when you start them up, you get this inrush of current and boom, you pop your cable.
Yeah.
Pretty pricey thing to go retrieve and fix and send back down again.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is spend all that time getting downhole, and then you go to press the green button
And it
on
doesn't turn
switch
on.
and doesn't turn on.
And
Yeah.
it's a process that these
Running
operators
running
learn.
any tool like that. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
The other thing, like to answer your question about the void in the market, there were alternative options and other providers of different products that were either securing or trying to protect. But I think the void was nobody was focusing on cable protection. And so while there were some other options out there, they weren't hitting the mark, and may have been a part of a portfolio from a company. So they weren't fully focused on cable protection.
yeah.
And what we saw is there needs to be someone who can fully focus on it. And that's really what these guys saw. And then they came to me with the challenge of, all right, so in order to hit that mark, we've got to consider all these variations. So there's so many different specs of equipment. And then on the production tubing, you're connecting with different thicknesses of cable and capillary combinations. So we had to include versatility and flexibility in this product. And it took a lot of time. It was a major challenge to accommodate so many different variations.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, on that one over there, that's 2 7/8 EUE, which you guys are fortunate because most tubing is either going to be EUE or PH6, right? So it's like you got, two main sizes and grade of tubing that you're going to use. But you brought up like the clearance issue, because like I'm looking at that and I think over there is beefy, right? Like it's pretty big. And so I imagine like if you had 4.5 inch or 5.5 inch production casing, like you don't have much clearance. Even with that, what is that actually like? What is that made of? How does that like when I first looked at the tool, I told Jake, I said, what makes me nervous, and you guys can offer your rebuttal on this, is like the bolting system. Like I saw the bolts, I was like, shit, man, like those bolts, H2S ate it up, and like you lost a bolt downhole. I was telling Jake, it's like the last thing you want is like metal downhole, right? Like, is there something like special that's made out of to withstand resistance and protect the cable, or is it just is it just metal?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, just metal would not fly in this market.
No, that's a great point, because see, that was one of the challenges with the products that existed before we did. So we're a specific kind of ductile iron. So although it's a casted product, it goes through special heat treat and all kinds of stuff. So it can take huge impacts and does not shatter. It's like the whole beauty of what it does. It stays together. Even if you break it, it still stays together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's because it
I
kind
wish
of
we had like some destructive equipment here.
Oh, man,
like,
we've
it's
done
pretty
some
intense.
tests.
We've done it. Yeah,
We should show some videos.
Yeah, we'll share some videos.
Can you guys
It's pretty
share what
entertaining.
it's made of, or is that proprietary?
So it is literally a ductile iron.
Okay.
It's a type of it. We'll let everybody else figure out exactly which one it is.
Yeah.
Don't give away the
Yeah,
secrets.
Nice
but,
try.
And then like the bolting and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean all that's a real concern. The bolts are way over designed for what they need to be. When you watch some of the installation videos, you see how hard they are on them, how quick they are.
Yeah.
This is built for field service guys. Like, to understand like their world. Coming back as a field engineer, like having to live that life. So
Dive in there. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, what I love about episodes like this is it's guys from the industry who recognize an issue, and you're like, you know what, I think we can do this better. Because we have people who come to us all the time, listen to the podcast for years, and they're like, yeah, I want to do something. I'm just not really sure like what ideas, and it's like, just pay more attention to like what you're doing in your daily lives. And so it's guys like you that are usually from the industry that are going to like actually solve some of the biggest problems. I'm curious, I've built software, we've built other companies, but never really built like anything that's like physical hardware.
Something you can hold.
Yeah, something you can actually hold,
Yeah,
right?
tangible. It's
Yeah,
Not
not.
only that,
podcast.
like, I mean, like the barriers of getting a downhole tool used. I mean, we could, I'm sure, talk about that a lot too. So yeah, like to Jake's point, tell us how you guys like actually went about getting this developed and getting your prototype and commercializing it and going through those pain points of actually getting an operator to run it downhole.
Yeah, so my background was in manufacturing. It was for a different industry, construction industry, but I think the initially we did third-party engineering, so we had the support to help us develop something that was more robust, and that is the original Hulk over there that you're holding.
Were you guys
And-
still like bootstrapped at this time, or you'd raise some money for third
Yeah,
party
well,
engineering?
so the three of us put our own money in this. We invested in it. We had some friends and family to help out. I think one of the greatest things about this business is we've been able to hold on to the equity, and we're very proud of that.
Yep.
But initially we did utilize some prototyping and some aid to get going overseas. We were able to find a manufacturer over there who had experience in downhole tools, and Mark and Matt and I would collaborate. They provided a lot of education, information on metallurgy and the constraints as I was trying to learn the wellbore and downhole conditions. And then the great part is if you think about the transition. So you brought up a good point. It's really hard to get things made, physical product.
I just imagine you guys like in Game of Thrones, like when they're making the swords, like you guys are just in there just like
Yeah, right.
banging away, right?
Like,
just
the blacksmith's in the
flying,
barn.
like,
Just
you're just like covered in like, black. And
That's a great point, because initially when we started making this, there was a little more of a old school manufacturing method that we utilized. And we knew that is not where we wanted to be the end result of our process.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the biggest successes of this business is the evolution of how we manufacture the products. And I think what we're really proud of right now is to say that 90% of the products that we make are made in the US.
Nice.
And it was a huge feat. And there's a lot of reasons why. Most of it was challenging ourselves and committing to learning. Hey, everyone says everything's cheaper overseas, China, India, but is that true? And with the advancements in technology, softwares, robotics, what can we get done here? So we were lucky enough to be able to partner with a foundry, because we cast everything.
Mhm.
So as opposed to stamp, where you're putting metal into a press, when you cast, you melt down that metal and pour it into a mold.
Mm-hmm.
So we scoured the U.S., met with lots of foundries. We found a partner in north of Green Bay, Wisconsin, who's a big foundry. They do a lot of agriculture, a lot of heavy automotive industry. And they're like, wow, this is interesting. You guys are oil and gas. We don't have a lot of oil and gas clients. And with their support and them connecting us with more of a robotic machine shop, we can take raw castings. They ship to this machine shop, and quite literally, guys, there's a conveyor belt and then robotic arms which is, where we started to where we are now is crazy. They're picking up like, and so it takes a raw casting, it sticks into this photo booth. All these cameras look at it and they're like, all right, that casting's good to go. And then it goes into machines to machine down to its skew, because there's different thicknesses of cables that we combine with. So in this process, we're taking the same casting and making 6 different skews. So it's pretty awesome.
That's pretty
Versus
slick.
previously you had
Previously, we had to invest dollars into a separate set of tooling and molds
So
for one product.
Yeah, you'd have 6 different castings, and you'd have to.
Yeah.
So I said a
as opposed to
multitude
one
of reasons.
casting.
This is one of the reasons we were able to justify it.
The product he's talking about is the one that's in the case, that longer one.
that
we're
long
looking
one.
at?
Yeah. It's, I mean, I got a lot of respect for manufacturing things like this. Like 4 years ago, I bought this company that was a marijuana product, and it was CNC machined, and it was just a dugout. And anyways, like, had a great company that was machining them in the US, tried to go overseas, Mexico, try to find had a great manufacturer that could do 100 at a time, but was trying to figure out, hey, how do we do 10,000 at a time? And it's so fucking hard to manufacture. I was like, man, this is it's difficult to find a partner that can help you with the manufacturing and find a scalable process like that to where you can.
Without Chandler, we couldn't have done this. The international connections he had for us to be able to go out and start the product that way. Yeah. And then now bring it back stateside. It's in full swing.
Yeah. I got a lot of respect for that, because it's hard.
Well, what do we do best in America? Just like fracking, we figure out the best way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I think as we expand into international markets, what's going to be a big thing is all the processes we've learned here and implementing them with manufacturers overseas. Because one of the big things we've learned is, what makes sense? What's the best way of doing something? And with all the ESG talk going on, and that being big in the news and very important, it's like, all right, so one of the biggest things we can do is we can localize our supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
And so those big cargo ships that are going all around the world, I mean, the carbon footprint of one of those is massive.
Yeah.
I think you read different things. Some are more, one cargo ship equates to 50 million cars.
Yeah.
So I think a real story, and what we're challenging ourselves and what would be a good challenge for the industry, is to say, all right, how can we be better? Let's think about our supply chain. And is there an easier way to source our materials instead of going halfway around the world to get them. Or if you're selling to an international market, manufacture in a different country.
Didn't you guys say that like you'd spend a lot of time in China too?
Yeah, and
you
I'd
were
had
like-
a background going there in prior work experience.
Mhm.
Probably the coolest thing for me was eye-opening that you can get things done in the U.S.
Yeah.
People think you don't. And maybe that made sense decades ago, but technology has really created a situation where you can get things done in the U.S.
Yeah, that's crazy. I love to hear that. It's funny talking about like the ESG point and the angle of being able to do things local. Someone created this parody account on Twitter the other day that's called Bros for Decarbonization. And anyways, he said, like, we're talking about buying supplements. He's like, oh, you got to check out this company in Houston. They're local. It's good for your carbon footprint, bro. And so same analogy here. It's like, man, if you you start thinking about the impact that could have one freight ship. Then also, just from an operations standpoint, like shipping and logistics is a shit show right now across the world. I mean, imagine how much easier it is being able to, have it manufactured a few states away.
Breakfast this morning.
It just add that much complexity to like running a business is already hard enough. And then when you have supply chain issues, I mean, it just really adds to it.
It's also cash flow. Overseas, you got to pay for product before it ships.
Yeah.
Here, you can work with companies and
that's such a good point.
Better utilize your cash.
That's such a good point. Like it'd be worth diving in sometime to look like, is it really cheaper to manufacture overseas instead of here in the US with the advancements of technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think what makes us unique is that, we're this ground up kind of thing where you already have these large companies that have a dedicated supply chain, and everybody in there has got bonuses on their supply chain initiatives, and everybody's, so siloed. Whereas like today, we're finding that, we're kind of the new guard like you guys are in this industry. And then our manufacturers are also kind of the new guard, right? And so from here on, right, this is built into our DNA.
Yeah.
So from here on out, that's who we are, right?
I love
kind
it.
of part of our culture too.
Yeah.
It's like when we have whiteboard sessions, like I'm sure you all do, we sit down and like, all right, let's gut check here. Are we doing this the right way? Is there an easier way to do this? Something that makes more sense?
Always looking
That's
for
why we
ways
have
to
25
avoid,
conversations.
Yeah, never enough whiteboards.
Yeah. So for you guys, talk about like actually getting it deployed. Like it's one thing to have a good product, but a good product's nothing if you can't get it deployed, right? And oil and gas industry is really infamous for asking the question, saying, oh, this product's great. Who else is using it? And, they want to see someone do it first. How did you guys actually start getting it into wells?
I think it was a lot of trusted relationships that we had within the industry, especially in the Bakken. And then you've got ultimately a knowledge base for the product, and ultimately it was low hanging fruit up in the Bakken at the time. Like clamps had already been deployed, right? And there was maybe an open area for that void to be filled, a new product to be introduced ultimately. And the relationships and ultimately getting the product in the ground, like you said, that's one of the hardest parts. It's like, well, so many of the questions we got was like, okay, so the bolting mechanism, what's going to cause it from coming undone, right? And it's like, well, it's torque. And if it's torque to a certain set point, like it will not come undone. And that's been proven over 500,000 units, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the initial hurdle, the brand identity, no one knowing who we are. I mean, that was coming from a large OFS company. You throw that name around, they're like, oh, great. Yeah. Tools. What do you need? Like, let's run them. And then all of a sudden you don't have that identity. And that was a struggle at first, but long story short, it's the trust, it's the relationship with that individual. And then knowing we had a product that would work. And then it's like Guy Raz, right? How I built this.
Yeah.
Was it a little bit of luck, or was it all skill?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a blend of both.
There's
for sure.
luck, yeah.
It's a blend.
Anyone that tells you that there's not luck involved with successful businesses is bullshitting. Yeah. There's
luck,
timing and momentum, make or break businesses. Right. Yeah. And so, on the bolting mechanism, not to get off on a side tangent, but you said it's torque. Are there tool hands that run these for you guys, or are just work over rig hands making them up?
Yeah. So the start of the company, there were ultimately the rig hands would ultimately run. So the
Mhm.
spooler and the rig hand, two people could put the clamp on. One has the pneumatic gun that's ultimately then torquing the bolt down, and then someone else is putting it on. It can be a one-man job too. It just works a whole lot more efficient with two.
Yeah.
So you can mate that product on 7-inch casing on 2 7/8 production tubing in like 8 seconds.
Okay.
So you're saving on a 10,000 foot well versus some of the other products, a stamp style product, you're saving like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's a significant amount of time. And so now in the last year, we've developed our own field service side.
Okay.
And so we're actually starting to service that, offering someone out to location. Took a big jump in insurance, things like that, right? To be able to do that,
Yeah.
logistics, hiring people, field service.
Yeah.
But we've gotten to that point to where if we really want to represent the brand like we want it, we're spread amongst 30 operators now, and
Yeah.
we're trusting every operator to execute it. Like I don't have 7 phones at one time to be able to check in with everybody,
Yeah.
especially with Motor Lead. Motor Lead is such a precise product.
Yeah.
And it's the largest OD in the string to where if you're installing this wrong,
It's going to hang up.
and
yeah.
that comes back on us.
Yeah.
right?
That's what I was about to say is like, it's nice if you guys are putting your hands on it and actually installing it because that it's getting installed properly. Right. And
Exactly.
Well, it was a
The
little
two-
different when it was just us, the three of us, and then we were adding a few people. We were able to like, we got to install this week. We're gonna, someone's gonna be there. But as we grow and you add people to the team, there's real value in the field services aspect.
Yeah.
How big's the team now?
Yeah. So 20 plus people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
And then we've got a lot. It feels a lot bigger with some of the contract work that we have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It helps us. But
Yeah. When you're torquing up those bolts, you said, someone has an impact gun. That's what I was going to ask is like, does it have to be done with a torque wrench to a specific torque or is it just when it sucks up? Is it tight enough?
Yeah. So, oh man, you've worked in the field, so I'm like, gotta be careful I say this. I've been there too, but no, we have a spec. We have we'd love it to be torqued.
I love
every
that
single
point
time.
because like I've never torqued anything
I
to
know.
spec. Like I just get a roughneck tight.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We put some fail safes in there to
Yeah, so
protect
that's right. So I mean, it does have a spec, and we hammer the spec, and we tell them, no, this is all you get. But
Yeah.
the reality is, no, there's a lot of leeway in there.
Okay, cool.
Intentionally done. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you gotta like any oil tools, like you always have to, we were talking before the podcast, so we've had those bolting podcasts on and
Oh yeah.
like the most like fascinating thing about it to me is like shit, like I didn't know that much like thought went into bolting systems. Like
yeah.
put a hammer wrench on it and I hit on it or get a cheater pipe.
Yeah.
Like just never really
Mhm.
put that much thought into torque and bolting things down. But yeah, I was just like kind of curious if it was like if it was really finicky on spec or if it had some.
With that particular
leeway.
product, it has 2 fingers that are ultimately biting onto the upset of the tubing.
Yeah.
To where if you then over torque 30 foot-pounds is spec. If you then over torque to 60 pounds, which we're not suggesting, you're not damaging the cable anymore because those fingers are grabbing into the tubing. So
Yeah.
it will not grip anymore.
Gotcha.
So you've got those fail safes in check to.
And I think Jake asked you, and you touched on it a little bit, but on the topic of how many you run, you said that you run about 8 of these on kind of like the BHA of the ESP. But on those, are you running those on every joint
Yeah.
or so every joint
Yeah,
you run
so
those on? Okay.
typical Bakken well, Bakken formation, 3 forks. You're landing at anywhere from 8,500 to 10,000 feet.
Mhm.
You've got some deeper where you're setting the ESP in the vertical section of the well, the vertical, right?
Yeah.
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 But yeah, so you're running anywhere from like 280 to 330 something joints,
Okay. Got you.
and you run a connection on every single one, just from an overall protection standpoint, because it's amazing, like crooked wellheads right at surface, or then just kickouts right at 1,000 feet. There gets to this point where you have the conversation with the operator. It's like, well, can we run every other? Can we run, on this section? It's ultimately you run the entire string, and it's a fail safe.
That's funny. I always remember this rig I went on. I was running pipe recovery in West Texas for wireline, and I go out to this rig, and I mean, they are stuck as fuck. And anyways, like I'm talking to them, and I'm like, what deviation are we at? And they're like 30 degrees. And this is a vertical well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 10,000 foot vertical well. And I was like, 30 degrees? I was like, how'd you guys get there? And they're like, well, we kept running surveys and we just thought it was wrong. So we just kept drilling. And anyways, like, on vertical wells back then, it's like if you got outside of 3-degree deviation, you had to cement and time drill to go back down. But anyways, I just like laugh, like you never know what you'll see, even 1,000 feet down. Cause I don't think it's as big of a problem anymore. This is like 9 years ago.
Yeah.
But like back then it was like, yeah, you just had people, they'd be running a survey and be like, oh no, it's just wrong. Keep going.
To your point, Colin, like I listened to Trisha, Petra Nerd.
Yeah.
Right?
Trisha. Yeah.
So we listened to her podcast this morning, and then we've got operators. That's our legacy operation up in Williston. I mean, they're spudding and TDing wells in 4 days, 5 days now. And that's North Dakota. This is 6 years ago. It's like 21 days to drill a well. Right?
Oh, I was just talking about that. What was I talking about that on? Some podcast or piece of content. Yeah, it was a podcast, I think. But I was talking about that because when I started drilling in 2010, I mean, Pioneer Natural Resources wasn't even drilling horizontals yet.
No,
I mean,
verticals.
like this is like right at
Yeah.
the beginning of shale. Took anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to drill an 11,000 foot vertical. And then you look at where we're at today, and
Different ball game.
it's like 10 days to drill a 20,000 foot lateral. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's crazy.
Mhm.
But with that, I mean, you talk to any guy that has downhole knowledge, and you know that there's dog legs. There's
Not friendly to the production side
Yeah.
at all. Not
and that's
friendly.
that's actually, this could be a whole podcast in itself, is that drilling doesn't give a shit about production. Like, they don't
Not
care.
at all.
the connection between drilling and production. It's
Yeah. That's your problem. That's like, I just got to
Deal with
drill this well in TD casing and get out of here. And then
different
we're good.
metrics, right, to go by.
Yeah. That's
So,
why we're here, man.
yeah. What are like, talk to us from like, let's dive into building the business, the operations side, scaling the business. You guys said you've been around 3 years. Is that right?
Yeah, 3.5.
3.5 years. Okay. There's nothing easy about building businesses, right? So what were some of the challenges that like really stand out to you guys, either from product design, manufacturing, building the team? Like,
I got one.
tell it.
And I think it'll feed into some other conversation. But I think initially, especially with the great relationships that Matt and Mark had, I think there was more of a thought that we'd go to some of the big service companies and have an easier time breaking into the market. And
So what'd you think, like licensing it to them and letting them distribute
or selling it to them and letting them have a
Mhm.
margin and bring us to a bigger audience so we could increase volume.
Yeah.
But what we found is there was a little pushback there. And I think what we realized, there's less care. There was less care at the time of like, hey, this is another product. Plus we were nobodies.
Mhm.
And they didn't know Hulk yet. But thank goodness to these relationships and calling on the operators and really getting a chance to get in front of them and for them to believe in the product, test the product, have a good experience, and want to come back and buy more. Long term, it really worked out for us because, like Matt said, we have more than 30 operator customers, and we are some with service companies now too. But it gives us a foothold, and we're not reliant on a small group of customers, which is a positive and a benefit throughout the business. So even if we need to go get debt for real estate and they look at our business, they're like, oh, you got 30 customers and you guys are stabilized. You're not reliant on just a few customers. So
So you're diversified across your client
Yeah.
base. You don't have just one client that's the majority of revenue.
yeah, at first we were like, oh man, I thought we were going to blow this out pretty quick. And then it took a little bit of slower start, but man, has it turned out to be a positive thing.
It allows us to be so in tune with the operator too, and like have this partnership.
Mhm.
Because previously the business model with third-party items is sell to the major service companies, and then they'll represent you, and then where your product goes from there, who knows? And then the feedback loop and everything else that gets a little lost there. It's interesting.
Mhm.
And so what a grind it was to get to where we are.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is the thinking of, hey, we'll go to the big service providers, NOV, Schlumberger, whoever it may be. The train of thought there is because it is so tough to deploy or to manufacture and deploy a physical product that is going downhole. I mean, can be super capital intensive, just long sales cycle. And so that's the first thought, is like, hey, we'll go to the major providers and we'll leverage their platform and get scale.
I think that's why
but-
you see 3 people sitting here, because we are more vertically integrated. And it really required a diverse skill set to be able to tackle this thing.
Yeah.
And it's turned out to be an incredible
Yeah,
partnership.
100%. I mean, you heard it from him earlier. They wouldn't have been able to do the manufacturing without you, right? And so it's like you need. We should also like talk about that a little bit too, like complementing skill sets between the team, not having too much overlap there. That way, you guys, all bring a skill set to the table. Like, how did y'all meet? And
Your wife actually asked the question. She was like, "So who's the CEO?" I was like, "We're all directors of the company."
yeah,
I was like, there is no CEO title. It's
We're the
Ops
CEO
and
of our
sales and-
different divisions.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
so functioning on like our different responsibilities and avenues. And then we have weekly meetings with the team on Tuesdays, and then weekly meetings from management on Thursdays. And it's that time where it's like everybody has their role and function. It's like cohesive environment to where like I don't like if this happens with every business, that's great. But like I thought there would be a lot more like ups and downs on that end, and it's worked out like pretty solid.
That's
Something
great.
about 3 works. When you have to make a decision, you shouldn't have
Yeah,
3 people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, isn't there a rule of 3 or something like that?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that makes sense. Kind
Yeah.
of like brings some balance. So you said that the Bakken was like really kind of the catalyst. Sounds like Permian Basin's starting to take off. Is that correct?
Yeah, Permian Basin right now is our largest growth area. Roughly 30% of the operators currently are running cable protection, and large ESP client base down there though. From
That's got to be pretty exciting if only 30% are running
it's
cable protection, because it just like
it's an
there's 70
educational thing.
At least
We're gonna be
70%
there.
of the market to grow into, right?
That's exactly right. Exactly right. It's an educational thing, and it's going to be with this business. It's been a step-by-step process and continuing to grow it. And right now, it's just going to continue to meet with the operators and have instances like this where we can sit down and chat shop and meet and do lunch and learns just to continue to spread that word.
Cool.
What's the ultimate goal for you guys? I mean, you said you've already run 500,000 of these bad boys across 30 operators.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
like, where do you go from there?
Right now, and then I'll let you guys take it. We got asked a question yesterday by a service provider that came by for a lunch and learn. They're like, what are you going to do next? I was like, we're so focused on cable protection. We're just in the production space right now.
Mhm.
Like you talk about drilling, completions, the fiber optic lines that are being run, tech lines. There's so much room in the space.
I did it with fiber optic lines in the Marine Corps. Like,
Yeah.
somebody would literally step on a fiber optic line, break it, and then it's like, oh God, I have to sit here and splice
we're,
these things.
we're there to protect it. And like
Yeah.
if it becomes subsurface then clamping too, I mean, we've not really dove into that too much, but right now it's all I said
Expanding
subsurface.
internationally too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internationally as well. But yeah, there's a lot of leg
Yeah, so
there's
for
a lot of
you,
legs
like
to grow with
scaling
clamps.
geographically, going internationally, but also potentially product offering and different types of things that you guys are, different cable applications that you guys are protecting. Like, I'm even thinking like, y'all are focused on land right now. Like, offshore downhole is way more complex than
Yeah.
land is. So
We've gotten some of those calls. It's just like,
Yeah.
let's prepare for this.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah, we've spent a couple of years now putting together some high horsepower engineering team here in Houston, and some designers and everything. Obviously we're able to get these products done, but like you're alluding to, like the risk and the testing you got to do and all the qualification. We've got the team now that's capable of doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been invited by a major operator to do something for not quite offshore, but that level of opportunity there. And so that is a next step for us to grow into.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, from a product offering standpoint, the diversity, like 2 and 7/8, right? Like the rest of the world uses 3.5, 4.5, right? There's so much more to it. And then complexity of different completion, control systems and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So huge
Yeah, that's
amount of
exciting.
growth
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
It's funny, man. I like stuff like this because, like, you just look at it like it looks like a boring business, right? Like,
Mhm.
anyone outside of oil and gas would look at this, be
Exactly.
like, this isn't fucking cool tech startup. What is this? Get the shit out of here. But like it is really interesting. One, it's interesting from engineering standpoint, manufacturing standpoint. Like, to me, like, everyone talks about like building software startups being hard, development. It is. It's hard to like scale software. But I personally think it's harder to build stuff like this. And there's not a ton of like story, like oil and gas probably has more stories like this than anywhere. And it just seems like there's an infinite amount of opportunity out there. Like there's always going to be somewhere to make a better tool or a better product, especially as, as ESPs grow, or, what's going to be the next tool that he's used downhole, and then what ancillary services or products will come off of that. So I think that's what's exciting about oil and gas.
Yeah. And the thing we like about it is although it is all those things you said, bringing in the new age vibe, and like at our offices and our team, which we have to give a huge shout out to, because this business would not function without the team we brought together. And I think they would all say when they came in from their initial interview and during the time they spent with us, that we do what we say we're going to do, and we're going to flush this out, but we're just getting started. We're going to continue to expand into new things. Everyone's ideas are welcome, which is really true. And then also creating that environment. You were giving us a tour earlier where it doesn't have to be work. It can be fun. And, just making sure that everyone has the flexibility they need. We all have different life situations. So being able to come to work and get shit done, and then be able to go home to your family, be able to do the things that you want to do in your life. That's what we're about.
That's good, man. Like that is something that's important to us and that we hammer on, changing the culture in oil and gas. And, I come from OFS background, and you spend 110 hours a week out in the field. And like one of the things that pissed me off the most when I was running wireline is, I'd be out on a Apache frac job for 40 hours, fracking this well, and then get back, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then they would require us to be at the shop at 8 o'clock, even if we didn't have a job, just sitting around.
Yeah.
And it was like the most archaic thinking, just because like, no, your ass is going to sit up here.
Yeah.
And then 5 o'clock would roll around, you leave to go home, and then boom, you get called out on a job and you'd be out. And so anyways, just like culture, and, not to beat a dead horse, we've talked about it on the show a lot, but like you'll have like major oil and gas companies get up on panels and they'll bitch and cry. And be like, oh, we can't attract millennial talent. No young people want to work in this industry. It's like, you got to change the culture. And it's like little things like that. Like, hey, let's have fun. All ideas are welcome. Guess what? That is basic and common as that seems. Like that is not a mindset in oil and gas, especially with engineers with egos, is like ideas aren't welcome at all places. And then just like flexibility, like that's what people want. Like come in and get your shit done, work, let's crush it, and then have fun doing it.
Yep.
The 20 employees that you asked about, what are some of the challenges from growing the business and just like the startup mentality and where we're at. People has been such a tough part, but the core people we have now, those 20 people, like just so solid.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
And but to find them, like
Hard.
It's a search.
It's hard.
And with you guys growing this business right now, like it just, I never realized how much time it took.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But definitely.
It's hard to like find cultural fits, to have the technical talent that you need. Like,
tremendous.
I bet there's different areas of, like between Digital Wildcatters and y'all's company. Like what's hard about Digital Wildcatters is, we're a creative company, right? And so there was nothing in oil and gas that like we couldn't go steal talent from anyone because no one was doing what we wanted to do, right? For y'all, it's finding cultural fits that have technical expertise, and it's hard. And not my motto, but a motto I've always gone by is you hire slow and you fire fast, and you just find like it takes a long time to find the right people. And it's not a process that you want to rush either.
No, you want to hire right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I guess the other thing to add there is talking about a product, metal clamps. We've brought a brand to it that's pretty cool. Hulk. I mean, it's a great brand. We brought y'all swag, and we're trying to make something that may seem not overly interesting to some, and have a big LinkedIn presence, big social media presence.
Dude, that little video,
future,
the video flyer that you guys sent. So like we opened up the tools. So if you guys don't know,
I told them it's not. I told them it's not even here because Misty has it.
So I was like, can we put, like, how much content can we put on one of these?
I was like, what's the storage on here?
Ship these out to people.
Pull full 20-minute videos on there. But no, it's a great point because like I don't give a fuck what anyone says. This is where the industry's moving. Have a CEO of a big public company, that not big public company, they're big EMP. They will be going public soon. And same thing. He's like, hey, I want to think about branding and creating a community around our company. 100%. I want to make content. Like, I guess like 99.5% of the industry does not think about that stuff, but that's the direction that the industry's going. And so it's like, you want a community based around Hulk. Like you want evangelists out there that like, you know, I think of, did you guys ever know, Magnum plugs, frac plugs?
The green,
the green ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, never made a dime from them. And like, I was an evangelist for their product. One, because
at trade shows, they would represent. Like,
yeah.
And
like I love the branding. I love the product. It was the best product. And like, they had me out there like preaching the gospel, and I still do. And that's what happens when you put time and thought into branding in the community and things like that. So I think it's super important.
Big thanks to you guys. I mean, y'all have given a platform for a lot of us to get up here and preach the brand in the industry.
Dude.
And
look, you don't have to thank us. It's fun for us. So like,
no, but I
feel bad like being thanked for something that's just like fun to us.
Yeah,
so
this is what I do for a living.
Yeah, it's crazy. We started this almost exactly 3 years ago, and we were just kind of like reminiscing about that yesterday. Because I mean, I'm sure sounds like we got to start around the same time, and it's like 3 years flies by. But then you look back, like if you start really thinking about it, it's like, man, we've come so far.
Crazy how
It's
much you
amazing.
accomplished,
It's
right?
Yeah.
Because we're so hard on ourselves, and especially when times are really good, that's when I think we get even harder on ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're looking at the bottom line. You're like, that was a good month, but it's like, all right, we got to get to it. And you're like, all right, when are we going to like slow down? I don't think there is ever a slowdown, right? You just continue to grow.
I think if you're a high performer and achiever, you're always pushing yourself to the best and to be better, right? So it just never stops.
Your podcast, though, literally when it came out, Mark introduced me to it, and I was spending a lot of time up in North Dakota at the time, and it was one of those like reliefs to be able to then listen to, because at the time you step out, there's not a lot of identity anymore at that point, right? You're representing this company that's relatively new, Hulk, and then you're finding this like therapeutic relief through the podcast, dude. It's like, because you're hearing these other stories or these other people going through the struggle, and you're like, all right, shit, this is why we're doing it.
Dude, that's so awesome to hear. That was like part of our thesis when we started it, was to build a community of people that are building, because it is a lonely road, and you kind of feel siloed. And you go from working at a big service company to where people have faith in you and answer, and then all of a sudden you're a nobody and no one wants to listen to you. That was part of our thesis for the show, was like, hey, there's other people out there that are building things as well, and they need to hear stories like this to know that they're not in it alone. So it's really cool that that happened for you.
Oh man, anybody that starts up a company, right? Like they want to reach out or more want to talk to them, because just having that back and forth is so important.
Well, we got I know for a fact that I have a lot of friends that are ESP specialists. Big shout out to my boy Big D, ESP influencer. I'm sure he'll check this out. So if someone wants to check out Hulk, where can they find you guys at online?
So our website is www.oiltoolsolutions.com. And that is where you can find us. There's information on the product. And
And then y'all are putting out content on LinkedIn too.
LinkedIn is Oil Tool Solutions as well. And then there'll be a rebranding for Hulk. But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we should explain. Hulk is resonated so well with everyone. Initially, it was the brand of the product, and Oil Tool Solutions was the company, and it provided the services.
Yeah.
But Hulk's just taking off.
Going all in on Hulk.
It's all Hulk,
like
baby.
Everybody references Hulk. You're like, all right, we're going with Hulk.
That's awesome. Well, guys, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being our first show with 3 people and playing around with our set here, our experiment. So appreciate you guys.
Rocked it. Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Deal.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Thanks, John.
Well, guys, when you're laying pipe, use protection. Hulk protection.
Love it.
There you go. There's your commercial.
Good tagline.
All right, guys. If you enjoyed the episode, take 2 seconds and forward it to all your friends, forward it to all your colleagues. Sign up for the BDE newsletter. It goes out every single week. Our open rate in our newsletter last week was 40%, which is wild.
People are liking it.
Which for like a newsletter is absolutely insane.
People are liking it.
People are liking it. We actually just launched the BDE show as well. We had some massive technical difficulties for the first
It's
episode.
a little
'cause
rough.
It
We'll get there though.
was live. But if you guys want to watch that, it's going to be at 10:30 every Tuesday morning. Go check that out. It's on the website. It's on our YouTube. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.